Hey guys, Corey, Faymus Media, and after the big long wait, many years, it's finally here, the Nikon D500. So guys, the D500 is definitely worth the wait. This camera is just bloody marvelous, fantastic. I wanna kiss it, give it a hug, and walk with it to my bedroom, and my wife would get jealous. I'm just kidding, guys. This camera is phenomenal. So let's go ahead and start through and explain why it's so phenomenal. X-Speed 5 processor, 20.9 megapixel sensor. With the X-Speed 5 processing, you get 1,640,000 ISO. Yes, you can expand to 1,640,000 ISO on a crop sensor camera, built-in Wi-Fi and Bluetooth, tilting 3.2-inch screen, and the multicam 20K sensor, which gives you 153 autofocusing points. So this camera, with the D5 aside, the D500 is the fastest focusing camera that Nikon has. It's faster than the D810, the D800, D850D, D7200. It's faster than all of them, D4S, D4, doesn't matter. This is it. If you don't have a D5, this is the fastest focusing camera Nikon has. It is bloody fantastic. Now, the video you're asking, if you shoot video, flawless. This camera shoots 4K and 24 or 30p up to 30 minutes. That's right, you still get the 30-minute limit, unlike the D5, which I still haven't fully tested or reviewed yet, but this camera gives you the full 29.99999 minutes, so basically 30 minutes. The only thing I don't like, they've dropped the ball on, and I feel like a whoomp, 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 like one of those failure moments where the camera just tilts and falls to the ground. Even my videographer doesn't get it. Why they gave us an XQD slot? Is Sony just paying Nikon so they can make sales out of their XQD slots? I mean, the only camera that has XQD is the D4 and the D4S, and now this, and you know, it just doesn't make any sense. I wish they used CFast or CF. The SD is fine, but if you want to use dual card slots, you're stuck with using an XQD and an SD. So other than that, the camera is bloody fantastic. Like I've said many times, it's got a circular eye cup, just like the D4, D4S, D5, and the D800, D810. So it doesn't have the square eye cup like the consumer cameras. This is a full professional magnesium body, better build quality, slightly heavier than the D71 or D7200, and not to be compared to the D7200. This is a much better camera. It also has 1.3 crop, which will give you 1.9 effective crop, almost a 2 times crop. And with the 20.9 megapixel sensor, it's fantastic for shooting wildlife and birds. And right now, the only thing I have to test is cyclists driving their bikes through the bike lane. But that still works the camera a little bit, and I was testing it a little bit earlier, and it's working wonders. This camera is fantastic. I almost want to just hug it and tell Nikon I love them so much. Except I want to tell them something else too. Get rid of the XQD slot. Please. XQD is useless. Really, truly is, and most people are going to agree with me. Sure, it might be fast, but who wants to buy an XQD memory card just for one camera when every other camera shoots on SD or CF? I feel like the bikes are gonna run me over, so I'm good. It's a lot better than standing in the car lane that I usually do, right? All right, so let's put this to work and let's see what this camera can do. I'm gonna wait for some cyclists to drive by and really put the autofocusing to work, although it's not really working the camera too hard. Spot on autofocus though, I'll tell you. Oh, and another thing you want to hear how fast it is while we're waiting for another bike to come by. Listen to this. You can put it into continuous high, and it shoots 10 frames a second up to 200 continuous frames, which, as you can hear, is basically as high as the Nikon D4, D4S, only 1 frame per second difference. So this camera is absolutely phenomenal, and you just heard me do that burst with the camera, shooting RAW and JPEG. So if it's able to shoot both at the same time that quickly, it shows you how strong the buffer is and how large that buffer is on this camera. It is a phenomenal camera. It's been a long time coming, but the wait has been worth it. One thing to mention is this camera is great for video and photo for weddings or sports or wildlife. So if you're shooting wildlife and sports mostly and you also shoot weddings, this is still good. If you're just shooting weddings, it still makes a great backup camera. We just got to test the low light. And I can feel the motor inside the camera where I'm holding it vibrating slightly, that it's working hard and tracking. I can just feel the pulses of the motor turning the lens. And I'm going to zoom in here, and it's pretty much spot on. I'm shooting on 72 autofocusing points right now. And we're spot on every shot. This is a brilliant, brilliant camera. Although I don't have anything super fast to track right now, but I'm confident that it will, based on what I've seen over the last couple of days. It really is a fantastic camera. And as always on Nikon cameras, the dynamic range is brilliant. There's MSG and the post office right beside us. There's so much to do in New York City. Always construction in New York City, always. Sidewalks being blocked, manhole covers exploding. There's always something really exciting going on in New York City. I almost have the overconfident autofocusing syndrome here. If that's really such a thing, I just made that up, but I feel like whatever I point it at, it's going to focus flawlessly every time. I don't feel like I could miss a shot with this camera. I really just don't. Tracking is just beautiful, just so quick and smooth. I'm starting to get used to the tracking on this camera. I don't know if I could go back to something that's slower. It's just so quick. You just point and it just snaps into focus like so quickly. These cars are doing about 25 miles an hour and I can just point, click, and every time it's in focus. And this car is going a little faster, tracking him the whole way. It's just brilliant. It's a really good focusing system. Hopefully the successor to the D810, which I assume is going to be the D850, is going to have this same autofocusing system. It's going to be fantastic if it does. This really is a wicked autofocusing system in every way. I'm going to test some video here. With the sun setting, it seems like the perfect opportunity. Shooting internal 4K, here we go. Internal 4K on a Nikon, that's something I've been waiting for. Seems like forever. And it looks brilliant. Dynamic range is amazing for a DSLR too. Out of all Nikon's DSLRs, believe it or not, this is actually the camera to get if you're shooting video. The D750 was great, but this will do everything the D750 will do, including the tilt screen, and it does 4K, and it's faster focusing. It is a crop sensor, so to get wider angles, you're going to need the 14-24 from Nikon, or a Tokina 11-16, or a Sigma Art 18-35 f1.8 for video. That's the smoothest focus ring I've ever felt in my life. But you have options. Forgive the handshake, but I don't have a lens with IS or VR on this camera. But the video quality is insane. Like I said, for a DSLR, it's just totally awesome. And in case anyone wondered if you're really going to get the full 29.999 minutes of record time on this camera, you will indeed. The timer starts as soon as you press record, like any other DSLR. I know it was speculated that it may be a certain time limit on there. I know the D5 is limited, but this one doesn't seem like there's much of a limit. 30 minutes is pretty long. If you're a wedding photographer, you wouldn't want to shoot this as your main camera. However, anything else is great, especially if you're traveling abroad or anywhere around the world, really, and you need photography and video. This is the ultimate package. If it had no recording limit at all, if there was no recording limit, well, then this would be the ultimate camera for anything, really. But that's a discussion for another day, because it's not a hardware limitation. It's actually a tax limitation internationally, which, like I said, is a discussion for a different topic, but look it up. It's a different type of taxation for the film industry, and they can't go beyond 30 minutes or it's considered a film camera, and the amount of tax they'd be charged on that, Nikon would have to raise the price considerably, which would make this camera not worth it. So it's a discussion, like I said, for another day, but just Google search that. Excellent. See, that guy's a sport right there. How you doing, man? Awesome. Just check it out on YouTube. It'll be on YouTube in a couple days. I feel like I could never miss a shot with the D500. I feel like that moment comes and you're going to be waiting to take the shot, and this camera will not let you down. I just feel like it's so quick and so accurate. I'm sure nothing's perfect, so eventually it'll make mistakes. It's man-made. It can't be perfect. Or could it be? Seems like it is so far. Maybe we should just stand in the middle of the street and risk our lives like we always do. I don't think Ray is down for that. Out of all the cameras I've shot with, I actually like this camera better. The only camera that even comes close to this for autofocusing is the D4S. but now that's technically outdated because the D5 is here, which I haven't reviewed yet. But this camera's about the best Nikon has besides the D5, but they're totally different price brackets. The D5 is $6,400 plus, and this is only $1,900 and some change, like $1,999 is the going rate right now. Man, I almost don't even want to give this back. I may have to get me one. People always have pretty good spirits in New York City. I've had my few incidences where someone didn't want their photo taken, but it's very rare. Everybody here is pretty open to a camera. I'm a big car guy. I love cars. I'm gonna have to get a picture of the Benz. I was kind of hoping he'd look over here, but oh well. You can go in the menu at any time and change your continuous low settings to whatever frames per second you want. So you could have your continuous high at 10 frames a second. Your continuous low could be 1 through 8, 9. I'd normally set it around 6. So you get a 6 or a 10 frames per second burst. So it really gives you options while shooting. Oh yeah, I gotcha. The diverse culture in New York City. It's so fantastic. It's one of the main reasons why I do my reviews here. You never know what you're gonna get with New York. I could never consider doing a review anywhere else, really, with the excitement going on here. I'm gonna try to track the bird right here. Perfect for the D500. I mean, it's tracking the bird pretty well, although it's not really moving. And I've set it to my 153. I set the tracking to 153 autofocus points, which is kind of panoramic across the viewfinder, which is really great because if the birds or wildlife move left or right through the viewfinder, it's going to track the bird as it's moving further away from the camera or closer. It really does feel like that's what they were aiming for, because just looking through the viewfinder, once you have this camera in front of you and you actually look through it, that's what it feels like. Anything left or right that's moving in and out of your focus is going to be able to track very quickly. So that being said, anything moving left to right in your viewfinder is going to be able to track the focus brilliantly. Like that's an example. He went right to left on my screen, and I'm looking at this image now, and it's blurry around the edge from motion blur, but he is perfectly in focus. As you can see, I moved with him, and you'll see that the background is blurred, but he is perfectly spot on. So the tracking, the 153 autofocusing points, can't stop talking about it. This camera really was meant to track things that are fast. If I was going to the drag strip, which I love to do, or I was going to go to a track day, then I would definitely take this camera over the D4S, hands down. Anything that moves quickly, this is the camera you're going to want to use. Just to show it wasn't a fluke. New York. Once again, background a little bit blurry because the shutter is only at 1/60th. The car is moving quickly. The car is spot on with the focus, so it's brilliant. What do you know? Spot on again. sitting in the bike lane, waiting for cyclists to come flying by so I can test this totally awesome autofocusing system. But the camera is great. You got your spot for your hot shoe, for your flash, and of course your remote control right there. Typical dial for Nikon on the top. You press the button to go through single, continuous, low, high, quiet, mirror up, or timer. And then of course your quality, white balance mode, and your spot metering are on the top. So it's pretty standard, feels like every other Nikon, so it's very comfortable. If you've been shooting on Nikon, you're gonna feel right at home. Just an overall amazing camera, better than everything they have in their lineup, with the exception of the D5. I wish we had some wildlife to shoot. We had that one pigeon earlier. Excellent, excellent. Ray likes the camera so much he's going to leave Canon and jump over to Nikon. I can move the autofocusing points around where I want them, and it tracks flawlessly. There's that pigeon again. I think it's following you, Ray. I think the pigeon's following you. Tracking in the dark at 1600 ISO. The only blur we're getting is from the shutter blur at 200ths of a second. Should have been shooting at 400 or higher, but the autofocusing is spot on.
So here we go, moving on to the low light test. And you'll see that ISO 400, 800, and 1600 ISO look really good. The D500 does pretty well for a crop sensor camera at high megapixel in low light. However, once you get to around 3200 ISO, which you can see here, you can see the color is starting to degrade on the sides of the image, as well as the noise is becoming noticeable. At 6400 ISO, you can see there's like a green hue at the edge of the frame, and the noise is getting worse, and by 12,800, it's just getting even worse and worse and worse. I would not shoot beyond 12,800 ISO. 25,600 starts to get to the point where it's looking like a cell phone photo, and at 51,200, that is even getting worse. We're at the brink of any usability here. Here we go, 102,400. This is just ludicrous. I think Nikon is just trying to show off. 204,800, they put it there just because they could. There's no reason for this, no logical reason at all. Okay, moving along to ISO 409,600. Nikon, stop trying to show off. 819,200 ISO. And no, it's not getting any better, Nikon. Why are we doing this? But no, Nikon's not going to stop there. Go ahead and freeze this 1,638,400 ISO. Completely useless, not usable. Looks like a pile of sand with ink blotches and color. You need a forensic technician, a ginormous magnifying glass just to find any trace of an actual image in here. It looks like someone just painted through a kaleidoscope or something. I don't know. This looks really bad. Nikon, we need less ISO, more dynamic range. That's just what I'm saying. Hey, I'm just speaking for myself here, but come on now. 1.6 million ISO is a little bit much. Now it's time to test the D500 out in low light with internal 4K video. So here we go, ISO 400 and ISO 800. Looks spectacular. You're not really going to notice any noise in video until you start getting around 3200 or 6400 ISO, which is really good for a crop sensor. As you can see, we're moving along to 3200 ISO right now, and you can see a little bit of noise dancing in the shadows back there, and it's starting to get a little worse at 6400 ISO, but 6400 ISO is very usable. Even 12800 is usable in certain circumstances, but this is probably the limitation I would go. 25600 ISO is not really usable in a professional setting, but maybe in some home videos. 51200 is probably the usability limit for home videos. In fact, it's still too noisy. 102,400 is starting to look like noise dancing everywhere. And by the time we get to 204,800, it's just looking like a blotch of color everywhere. It's just a mess. Nikon, are you trying to show off again? 409,600 looks worse than surveillance footage in a black hole on a desolate planet somewhere. 819,200, this is just a waste of video. There's absolutely no image here. 1,638,400 ISO, I give up. Oh my God, this is horrible. Many photographers around the world have been waiting so long for a replacement for the D300 and the D300S. And while the D7100 and D7200 are phenomenal cameras, they are not replacements for the D300 or the D300S. Finally, the D500 is here to replace the old D300 and D300S, and it's a big success on Nikon's part. If you can look past the XQD slot, which is really the only fail of the camera, and of course the gimmicky ISO range. Anything over ISO 25,600 is completely useless. I think they're just showing off at this point, and to try to sell the camera, they're really pushing the high ISO range. But to be totally honest, the Nikon D500 is a phenomenal camera. Just keep the ISO below 25,600 and forget about Nikon's gimmick of high ISO in the well above the million range, because you're not going to be able to use it. The only shortcoming of the camera truly is the XQD slot. If you already have one, great. If you don't, you're gonna have to buy one. You cannot rely on an SD card, especially if you're professionally shooting. This is not only the best crop sensor body that Nikon has in the professional line, but it's probably overall the best professional crop sensor camera on the market today, overshadowed by only two things: an insanely high ISO range, which is completely useless, and the fact that you're going to have to go ahead and grab an XQD card. But I suggest just grabbing one, as this camera is phenomenal. The D500 and all its bells and whistles is finally here, and it's left the train station. Unfortunately, the high ISO range didn't have its boarding pass and got left behind.
So the Nikon D500, where does it sit? Well, it's better than the D4 or the D4S for autofocusing. Has built-in internal 4K video up to 30 minutes, 24p or 30p. Has Nikon's flat profile for video or photo. It's got the new 20K multicam sensor, 153 autofocusing points, X-Speed 5 processor, which is going to keep the noise level down as much as possible, even though it's a crop sensor camera. 10 frames a second up to 200 frames puts it just under the D4 and D4S by 1 frame per second shooting. I haven't tested the D5 yet, but this camera is a beast. Magnesium alloy body, very, very rugged, very tough. 3.2-inch display. It's got the round eye cup, which is the professional eye cup, versus the square one found in the D7200 or D7100. This is a long time coming. Nikon has nailed it spot on. USB 3 support, Bluetooth and Wi-Fi built in. About the only mistake they made was the XQD slot. Some people are gonna hate it, some people are gonna like it. Most people agree with me. It's kind of useless. They should have put CFast or dual SD cards, which came in the D7200, which isn't really great either. They should have just did a CF card and SD card. I don't know why they put XQD. It's like they're in bed with Sony and they're pushing it to the camera. The only downfall of the camera, if you're shooting wildlife, sports, racing car events, anything with speed and you need tracking, this is the camera for you. It does internal 4K as well. Even if you're an event and wedding photographer, this is still the camera for you because it does great video and great photo, and it would make a great backup to the D5 or D4, D4S if you're shooting weddings, or even a D800, D800E, D810, doesn't matter what you're shooting on. This is a great camera, and you could get away with just shooting weddings with this camera, even though it is geared towards more of the wildlife and events and sports and stuff like that. It's flawless tracking and it focuses so quickly. It's just an amazing camera. So in short, if you're looking to buy a new DSLR, this was worth the wait. Skip right past the D7200 if your budget can afford it. This is the camera for you. It is a home run. They nailed it. Nikon is doing fabulous. This is the best DSLR, D5 aside, because I haven't tested it yet. This is the best Nikon camera released besides the D5. And when I test the D5, then I will know for sure. But this is amazing. The D500 is flawless, and it's not very heavy, but it's very rugged, I can tell, and it's weather sealed, so you can't go wrong with that. The Nikon D500 is amazing. I got the Nikon D5 review coming up real soon. Stay tuned for that. We're still waiting for the Ursa Mini. Will this camera ever come out? I'm probably gonna do a review video on if the camera even exists and is even really gonna come out. But kidding aside, I've been waiting over a year for this camera to review it, so don't think that I am not listening to your guys' emails and questions about it. I'm gonna do a review on it as soon as I can. I got a lighting tutorial for video on shooting weddings and how to light the dance floor, and on the best lights to buy. That's coming out soon too as well. Don't forget to subscribe. Check out my other YouTube videos, and to purchase any of the gear I review, including the D500, make sure to use the links in the information box below to keep this channel alive and keep the new reviews coming. Don't forget to check out my blog, faymusmedia.com/blog. Go to the right-hand side of the page and sign up for the newsletter. All the best deals at B&H are gonna be in there. Every time I get a review video going, or I find a camera or a lens or any gear that's really, really affordable or is on sale or has some amazing deal, I'll make sure to send that out to you guys. Sign up for that newsletter as well. Also, my blog, still need beta testers for the forums. They are still in the works and they're coming out. Be sure to stay tuned for that. So guys, don't forget to subscribe, and to purchase any of the gear I review, please use the information box below and use those links to keep this channel alive. Anything you're purchasing, click on those links down there to browse through the sites. It really does keep the reviews coming, allows me to focus more and more time on the YouTube channel. But once again, I'm Corey with Faymus Media. This is the D500, and happy shooting.